Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I noticed that there's only a few of us joined at the moment, but I am expecting more attendees later on that have registered. Just to introduce myself, I'm Jill Foley. I work in the Data Standards and Products Informatics Directorate, along with my colleague Natalie. The future of ehealthopensource.org is now. The aim of the webinar today is really to consult with yourselves and to understand how the ehealthopensource.org can be taken forward as an ecosystem beyond September 2011 when our project ends. So just to give you an overview of what I plan to cover today, essentially today's session aims to give a brief overview of eHealth Open Source, from its origins to where we are now, what assets it has to offer, and then to the main objective, which is about our transition proposal and to get your views too. And I aim to cover this in 4 areas, which is the background, assets, transition proposal and your views. So to give a little bit of background, and I appreciate that most online now will already be aware of this, the Department of Health Informatics Directorate has been working closely in partnership with the University of York for the last 2 years on a funded project. This project ends in September this year. It's currently resourced with a full-time research assistant, and we've got 1 academic member who's online with us today, Kieran, and then of course myself, who's the industry supervisor, which previously was Denise Downs. After September, this resource clearly ends, so today we're looking at how we take this forward beyond today. So at this point, I'm just going to hand over to Natalie to describe this.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. As you can see from the picture, the ecosystem is a concept containing clouds with different colors, which represent different open source communities. The 2-year KTP project serves as engine of the ecosystem to identify, facilitate, and connect open source projects and communities in healthcare. During the past 18 months, the KTP has developed the ecosystem business model consisting of a marketplace model, a contribution model, governance model, and partnership model. We signpost open source projects and help them increase visibility in the NHS. We also have conducted and disseminated research findings such as a case study, white paper, best practice with regard to open source license, procurement, business model, and so on and so forth. We have organized workshops, webinars, and other kinds of network events to help facilitate the appetite of open source in general in healthcare. For example, we have a website portal, ehealthopensource.org, to share news and events, knowledge and policies. And currently we've got quite active dialogues in our LinkedIn group and Google Forum. On the ecosystem distribution list, 35% of participants are from suppliers and 25% from the NHS. Therefore, to increase the appetite of open source in the NHS organization is one of the things the ecosystem should look into in the near future. And Jill, do you want to introduce the Smart Healthcare 2011, where we have a variety of activities going on?
Yes, thank you, Natalie. On the 14th and 15th of June, there is the Guardian Smart Healthcare Live exhibition, where we've managed to gain ourselves a small stand to promote the ehealthopensource.org organisation. And basically, we will be attending. We aim to share our learning and promote open source for health and social care. We've currently prepared a banner and postcards that we hope will encourage and engage the wider NHS community and health in general. Alongside this, we're running a competition with The Guardian, which is looking for 2 categories, which is open source best practice and open source best business case. The closing date is in fact the 30th of June. However, we did have an earlier closing date of the 16th of May, where we offered the opportunity for those that got their applications in early to provide a demonstration of their successes in the business. And we've got a number of suppliers that will be presenting there, one of which is an NHS acute hospital provider. So we will look forward to seeing some of you there. So what are our assets? Well, we see the portal as one of our assets. It's got a knowledge centre, we've presented case studies, events and showcase projects. Going forward, we hope to have on there a code forge, which is under development as we speak. It's been donated by a supplier who we've got on this call today. The initial code forge will be fairly basic, it's very experimental to test the concept and get things out there. But we aim to have 2 access models, which is so that we have a secure environment for the NHS staff that are still resistant to open sourcing their products to more than just the NHS, and then there'll be the open access model. The first is really in response to the NHS's request, which was that some organisations feel reluctant at this stage to share open source beyond the NHS. So this model should support that. And then, of course, we will hopefully have a future webinar which we will be able to demonstrate this. So is open source supported by the government? Well, the answer is yes. The Cabinet Office produced their ICT strategy recently, which sets out a number of aims that need to be achieved by September 2011. One of which is the government plan to publish a toolkit for procurers on best practice for evaluating the use of open source solutions. They also plan to establish an open source implementation group and system integrator forum and an open source advisory panel. And I'm pleased to say that we've got a meeting with the Cabinet Office on the 9th of June to talk through how health currently works, as we found that this operates different to some of the other government departments. So we've agreed to share our learning, any barriers, challenges and strengths and opportunities that we've learned along the way. So that we're very positive about that. So, where are we now? Well, essentially, we're now into June. The project's coming to an end in September, as I've said earlier, and therefore we're really looking for something to start transitioning from now that takes us to the end of September. And so we're really looking for an ecosystem management body, which is, as I say, the main purpose of today's webinar. So I'd briefly like to discuss our transition proposal, and I've tried to keep the slides purposely very short and very sweet so that we could concentrate on the real matter today, which is discussing going forward. But the 3 main themes that we thought were important to consider are about the ownership going forward, governance, and then just the general upkeep of an ecosystem.
CodeForge, Tactics 4 have volunteered and donated the infrastructure on which we are running a CodeForge, which is similar to the SourceForge software. It's called GForge. It has the various project services for code development and coordination, collaboration between organisations. We're certainly going to sponsor this infrastructure by donating the capacity certainly for the foreseeable future, and support the 2 access models that we're speaking about there. And I hope that we will have more details on this in a future webinar, when perhaps we will be bringing in other open source code that has been developed by CFH and other healthcare organisations onto that particular forge.
To the transition proposal. So from September, obviously, we're looking to see that there is some sort of ownership of an ecosystem to take it forward. As I've previously stated, there are no plans for this to be owned or maintained from central government or the NHS. So when the project ends, the resources disappear, and we're really looking for somewhere to offer the portal email address really for someone to take that on board if they so wish. So, in order to go forward, we're potentially proposing that we're looking at a non-profit foundation organisation. So do we want to create an organisation that has ownership of the assets and in effect the ecosystem brand name? That's one of the questions that I want to present, which we'll discuss at the end. Governance. Do we need a board of directors? If we set up an organisation, then a board of directors is required to govern. In which case, would we need a set of subcommittees? How would we run it? Would it be run on a volunteer basis? Again, this is where we hope we can get advice from yourselves as to how this could infrastructure would work. And then last but not least, upkeep of the ecosystem and the website. There would obviously be administration costs associated with upkeeping an ecosystem and maintaining a website. As well as that, there would also be issues around the funding. Would it be community-owned e-market? Would there be a service charge, a membership fee? Again, these are all questions that we've asked ourselves, but that we want to pose to yourselves today as to how it can go forward. So I said I would keep it short and sweet, so we could get down to the real meat of the business, which is to ask yourselves how we go forward. It's basically over to you to get your views, and so this is your opportunity to influence the future implementation of an open source ecosystem for health and social care.
For the presentation so far, I mean, I think I'm not able to go back a slide, but you know, the key question so far has been raised as to whether there's a need to create another organisation or a new organisation to take on this work and to foster it going forward. And I think it's a very good question, but my initial instinct is to say that why would we want to do this within the UK alone, and what are the reasons not to just be trying to tie in with the Open Health Tools initiative, because that seems to be the international front runner here, and I think unless we can prove that that's not worth joining in as a member of, then I'm just not convinced that we should be recreating this within the UK. So I might put that question to Jill.
Yeah, I think that's a very important question actually that you've raised, and that is something that I will take back to the steering group members. It hasn't. Before I joined the project, a consultation was done with the NHS where we did talk to the NHS organisations about open source, and there was a reluctance from certain parts of the NHS to open source. So I guess my understanding is, having taken on this project, and Denise will be able to elaborate more, is that we were looking to provide an infrastructure that was safe and encouraging, but without it being a top-down approach, so without it being Department of Health or NHS Connecting for Health led. So the reason we've got to where we are at the moment with these proposals is really to get people to put a toe in the water, and that was the initial reason that we are where we are now. Having said that, that's not to say that Tony's suggestion isn't a good and valid one, and I think we do need to take that back to the steering group. But I think, you know, what I've just described is one of the reasons why we've been looking to do something much more specific to the UK, but recognising that in the true sense of open source, you know, we don't really want things just to be the NHS, and we don't really want things to be just the UK. But I think it's going to take a while for some of the NHS community to get on board with this concept, and so we're just trying to facilitate that, really.
Tony, I agree with everything that you're saying about OHT. The only problem is that we weren't getting any response in the UK, and that's why we tried to set up something separately.